I always loved the quiet of the night shift at Dunkin' Donuts. The place transformed after midnight, the usual hustle and bustle giving way to a serene calm. At 42, I appreciated these peaceful hours. It gave me time to think, to unwind. So when weird customers dropped unannounced amidst my break, I used to get really pissed. And this one time, I got really pissed, which kind of backfired on me. I was about to close the place when the bell above the door jingled. I looked up to see a gaunt, disheveled man enter. His clothes hung loosely on his thin frame, and his eyes darted around the shop with a nervous energy. He approached the counter, his lips twitching into an uneasy smile. From that very moment, I got creeps. "Welcome to Dunkin' Donuts. What do you want?" I was so tired that I didn't even try to sound nice. The man stared at me blankly for a minute straight ahead, then asked, "What should I have?" It sounded so idiotic that I lost it. "Decide for yourself? I'm not your dad," I answered rudely. His left twitched with that reply, and then finally he asked for a coffee and a plain donut. As I prepared the order, I could feel his eyes boring into my back. It was unsettling, but I brushed it off, attributing it to the late hour and the stranger's odd demeanor. I placed the coffee and donut on the counter. "Here you go," I said, offering a nod. He grabbed the items without a word and shuffled towards the seating area. As I turned back to the counter, I heard a noise behind me, a strange shuffling sound. I spun around and my heart nearly stopped. The man was on all fours, sitting like a dog with a maniac grin plastered across his face. "I didn't kill him," the man wailed, his voice echoing through the empty shop. "I didn't." My blood ran cold as the man produced a knife from his coat pocket, waving it erratically. I scrambled to the back of the shop, my mind racing. The man began to crawl, dragging himself forward with a terrifying determination. I bolted out the back door, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I glanced over my shoulder and saw the man still crawling, the knife glinting in the dim light. I ran to my car, fumbling for my keys. I managed to get inside and lock the doors just as he reached the vehicle. He slammed his head against the car's windows, the knife clunking against the glass. "I didn't kill him!" he screamed, his eyes wild with desperation. My hands shook as I tried to start the car, but it wouldn't turn over. The fuel gauge read empty, just my rotten luck. Panic surged through me. I reached for my phone and dialed 911, my fingers trembling. "There's a man with a knife trying to kill me," I gasped. I'm at Dunkin' Donuts, 324 Main Street. Please, hurry." I dropped the phone and slumped back into my seat, watching in horror as the man continued to assault the car. The knife scratched the glass, the sound grating on my nerves. "I didn't kill him," the man kept repeating, his voice growing more frantic. My vision blurred, and the world started to spin. The last thing I saw before I blacked out was his crazed eyes staring into mine. When I returned to my senses, I was surrounded by a flashing lights of police cars. Officers were milling around and paramedics were checking my vitals. I sat up, my head pounding, and looking around. The creepy man was in handcuffs, being led away by two officers. He was still muttering, "I didn't kill him." A detective approached me. "Are you okay?" he asked, with concern in his voice. I nodded, still trying to process what had happened. "What's wrong with him? Who is he?" I managed to ask. "His name is Andrew Smith. He has a history of severe mental illness. We did some digging and found out he had a traumatic past." I listened as the detective recounted Andrew's story. When Andrew was 10, he had a younger brother who was just 2 years old. One day, Andrew took his brother out to play, and a car hit the little boy, killing him instantly. The accident left Andrew shattered. His father blamed him for the tragedy, subjecting him to years of abuse and neglect before abandoning him altogether. Since then, Andrew had been in and out of psychiatric facilities, haunted by the memory of his brother's death. "He's reliving the trauma," the detective explained. "He didn't kill his brother, but in his mind, he's been trying to atone for it ever since. Tonight, he snapped." I shuddered, the horror of the night settling over me. I glanced over at Andrew, sitting in the back of a police car, rocking back and forth. "Will he get help?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The detective nodded. "We'll make sure he does. He's not evil, just broken." As the paramedics helped me to my feet, I couldn't stop but feel bad for Andrew. The daunting realization that me being rude to Andrew by mentioning his dad must have triggered his old traumas, hence he reacted the way he did. I hope Andrew's getting the help he needs. The night shift at Dunkin' Donuts would never feel the same, but I request everyone watching this, please be nice to strangers because you might not know what storms that person's fighting inside. Moving into a new house is always a bit unsettling, but our new place was next to an abandoned Dunkin' Donuts which had burned down almost a decade ago, which was infamous for being haunted, adding an extra layer of eeriness. My wife Lisa and I had just settled into our routine when suddenly, one morning, I found a box of donuts placed before my door. It had no label nor any mention of the sender. I found it weird. Lisa had a watery mouth when I brought it in, but I have a strict policy of not accepting food from strangers, so I threw it in the bin, despite her protest. Then, it became a ritual. Every morning, a fresh box of a dozen donuts would be sitting on our doorstep. At first, I thought it was a friendly gesture from the neighbors, but when I brought it up, they simply had no idea. I kept throwing the boxes away, but the donuts kept arriving. Growing frustrated, I even installed a camera to catch the culprit, but the footage showed nothing. One moment the porch was empty, the next, a box of donuts appeared as if by magic. "Lisa, we need to find out who's doing this. It's starting to get weird." Lisa just laughed. She loved donuts, and to her, it seemed like a harmless mystery.
Maybe whoever is being benevolent will stop once we actually eat it.
"No food from strangers. These pranksters will mix in laxatives to get reaction pranks on YouTube. I don't trust them." But then, one morning as I entered the kitchen, I caught her sneaking a donut from the box. She smiled, powdered sugar on her lips.
Relax, John. They're just donuts.
That was the night things took a turn for the worse. I woke up to the sound of knocking on the windows. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but the knocking was rhythmic. 3 knocks, a pause, then 2 knocks. I got up to check, but found nothing. As I lay back down, I heard footsteps in the hallway, followed by a soft, eerie bell sound. It sounded like those bells you see at a hotel reception. "Lisa, did you hear that?" She mumbled in her sleep, turning away from me. I felt a chill run down my spine. Over the next few days, the disturbances became more frequent. The knocking, the footsteps, the bell. It was like we were living in a nightmare. Lisa started acting strange. She was distant, often staring blankly at the wall. One night, I found her in the kitchen, standing perfectly still, clutching a knife. "Lisa, what are you doing?" And out of nowhere, the same bell sound came. Suddenly, she turned to me, her eyes vacant, then suddenly lunged. I barely managed to avoid the blade, stumbling backwards. After then, she ran at me like a madness had taken over her. She chased me through the house, her movements jerky and unnatural, stopping, growling to herself, and then chasing. But as soon as I reached the front door and threw it open, she stopped abruptly, her neck twisted, and just looking at the abandoned Dunkin' Donuts restaurant. "Lisa, what's happening to you?" She didn't respond. Instead, she began walking slowly towards the burnt-out building. I followed her, keeping a safe distance. By this time, some people from the neighborhood started coming out of their houses. An old man approached me. "I don't know if you know this, son, but something is wrong with that place. It burned down 10 years ago, killed 6 men. Lisa continued her slow march to the building, oblivious to everything around her. She reached the entrance, which was nothing more than a charred frame, and walked inside, stepping over the rubble, heading straight for the old counter. I ran after her, yelling out her name. She stopped, bent down, and picked something up from the debris. "Lisa, please!" She emerged with a small, tarnished bell, the kind you find at a hotel lobby. She placed it on the old counter, kept looking at it like stuck in a delusion, and then ring. Ring, ring. I felt a deep, cold fear grip my heart. I called 911. By the time help arrived, Lisa was still standing there, ringing the bell, her face a blank mask. They had to sedate her to get her to the hospital. Lisa was later admitted to a mental health facility. It's been 2 years now, and she hasn't opened her eyes since. I wish she hadn't eaten those donuts that day. I don't know how, but somehow that is what led to everything. I'd never seen anything quite like her. It was a Tuesday night, a dead shift at Dunkin' Donuts, and I was stuck closing up. My name is Melania, and I had worked at that place for 2 years. The hours were long, the pay was crap, but it was a job. That night, the usual routine of working like a zombie took a turn because of a strange woman. She sat in the corner booth alone, a strange-looking woman wrapped in a scarf, wearing sunglasses despite the late hour. It was nearly midnight, and she had been there for hours, ordering large Coke after large Coke, 11 in total. Who drinks that much soda? There was a basket which she had placed on the table, covered completely with small holes to the side. Something about her felt off as the hours passed. I approached her cautiously, my nerves on edge.
Ma'am, we're closing soon.
She looked up, her face hidden behind those dark glasses, and said,
I will be dead when the clock strikes 12. But first, I need to tell you 3 secrets.
Are you okay? Do you need help?
She ignored my questions, instead continuing, her voice a flat monotone.
Tonight, I seduced and murdered a congressman.
My breath caught in my throat.
What are you talking about?
She leaned in closer, her presence almost suffocating.
Congressman Harold Green. I approached him at the hotel bar, charmed him with lies and promises. He never suspected a thing. We went up to his room, and while he poured us drinks, I injected him with a poison derived from a plant native to my homeland. It was painless. He didn't even see it coming.
I felt a chill run down my spine. She smiled, a cruel twist of her lips visible beneath the scarf.
I had to do it.
He was too close, bringing in a policy which would upset the status quo between my people and yours. We couldn't allow that.
Your people?
I echoed in disbelief. She removed her sunglasses, revealing eyes that were not human, large, black, and reflective.
As you can see, I am not lying. My race has been cooperating with your government for decades. We share knowledge, technology, and get some things in return. But Green was going to do something. He had to be stopped.
I stepped back, my legs trembling.
This is insane. You're crazy.
She stood up, towering over me, and I realized just how small I was compared to her.
Believe what you will, but know this. There are more like me, watching, waiting.
She looked at the clock on the wall, ticking towards midnight, then turned to me with those otherworldly eyes, and for the first time I saw something almost like regret.
The 3rd secret.
She began, but a strange sound cut her off, a low humming vibration that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. She froze, her body stiffening like a statue. I reached out, my hand shaking, and touched her arm. She was cold, unresponsive. Then, without warning, she turned and walked out of the diner, her movements almost robotic. I saw her get out and turn to the empty alley behind the diner, but suddenly, a bright flash of light came out of nowhere and blinded me. I rushed out and ran to the back of the alley, but she was gone, vanished without a trace. I returned to the diner, my heart pounding. Her basket was still there. I knew I shouldn't, but I had to look. Carefully, I approached it and lifted the cover. Inside were strange, translucent eggs, pulsing with an eerie glow.
This is what lack of sleep does.
I reminded myself, wondering if I was just tired and imagining things that weren't there. Just then, the TV mounted in the corner of the diner flickered to life. A breaking news report cutting through the static. The anchor's voice was grim. Congressman Harold Green has been found dead in his hotel room. At the moment, it appears that he suffered a stroke while taking a bath. Authorities do not suspect any foul play. I left the basket, my hands shaking uncontrollably. This couldn't be real. It had to be some kind of sick joke, a nightmare. But the evidence was there, right in front of me. Those eggs, the news report, her chilling confession. I went home that night, but sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, those black, strange, soulless eyes staring into mine. I heard her voice, her final words echoing in my mind.
There are more like me, watching, waiting.